What if the plants growing in your backyard right now are the exact same plants that kept people alive in the desert 3,000 years ago? Not decorative herbs, not garnish, real medicine growing in real dirt, written down in the oldest book on earth. Most gardeners plant tomatoes and basil without ever knowing that the Bible is basically a seed catalog for some of the most studied healing plants in modern nutrition research. These weren't symbolic plants used in ceremonies. They were food, grown by hand, eaten by people doing brutal physical labor in one of the harshest climates on the planet, and it kept them alive. Stick with me, because number 7 on this list is a plant so nutrient-dense that modern researchers still can't fully explain why it works as well as it does. And number 10 is a plant most of you are probably already growing and pulling out as a weed. If you want more ancient plant, modern science content like this every week, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming. Let's get into it.
Item 1. Barley. Endurance grain. Barley shows up again and again in Scripture. It was the grain of the poor, the grain of the field worker, the grain that fed a prophet in the wilderness for 40 days on almost nothing else. Here's the detail people skip past. Barley isn't just filler. It's one of the richest known sources of beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that has been studied in hundreds of clinical trials for its effect on cholesterol and blood sugar. The FDA allows a specific heart health claim on barley products, something regulators only approve after a mountain of evidence. Traditionally, it was hand ground, kept whole, bran and germ intact, and baked into flat cakes right on hot stones. No refining, no stripping. We lost this when white flour took over. Faster, softer, sweeter, and missing almost everything that made the original grain valuable. Grow it yourself. Barley is a cool season grain, easy for beginner grain growers, and one of the most forgiving crops for small plots. Think of barley as the original slow-burning fuel source, and it's still sitting in the seed catalog. Item 2. Lentils. The birthright bowl. You know the story. Esau traded his birthright for a bowl of red stew. For centuries, that's been told as a story about poor decision-making. But ask a different question. What was actually in that bowl that made a starving man give up everything for it? Red lentils, cooked down with garlic, olive oil, and wild herbs. A single cooked cup delivers close to 18 grams of plant protein and roughly 15 grams of fiber. And that fiber is largely prebiotic, meaning it directly feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Lentils also carry one of the lowest glycemic index scores of any carbohydrate food, so the energy release is slow and steady rather than a spike and crash. Grow it yourself. Lentils are a nitrogen-fixing legume, meaning they actually improve your soil while they grow. A 2-for-1 crop for any vegetable garden. Esau wasn't foolish. His body knew exactly what it needed. Item 3. Garlic, onion, and leek. The wilderness craving. In the wilderness, the Israelites complained about missing manna, and what they specifically craved from Egypt was garlic, onions, and leeks. Not meat, not bread. The allium family. That craving lines up with real biology. Garlic's active compound, allicin, is one of the most studied natural antimicrobials in food science, active against dozens of bacterial strains. Onions and leeks are loaded with quercetin, a flavonoid researchers have linked to reduced histamine response and lower inflammation. Some studies note effects on inflammatory pathways similar in direction to over-the-counter anti-inflammatories, though not a replacement for them. Grow it yourself. Alliums are some of the easiest, most pest-resistant crops for a home garden, and they store for months after harvest. That craving wasn't weakness. It was the body asking for its maintenance crew.
Item 4. Bitter greens, chicory, dandelion, and watercress, the Passover herbs. Exodus 12 doesn't suggest bitter herbs at Passover. It requires them. Modern readers skip past this detail, but the specific plants matter. Wild chicory, dandelion greens, watercress, and horseradish root. All bitter. All working on the same organ, the liver. Bitter compounds in chicory and dandelion stimulate bile production, and bile is how your body clears fat-soluble waste. Watercress contains glucosinolates that activate your body's own antioxidant defense pathways. Grow it yourself. Dandelion and chicory are two of the lowest maintenance edible plants that exist. Many of you already have dandelion growing wild and have been pulling it as a weed. We bred bitterness out of vegetables to make them sell better. In doing that, we bred out the exact compounds that made them medicine.
Item 5. Figs, the battlefield recovery food. 1 Samuel 30. David's men find a collapsed, starving Egyptian servant in a field. What do they give him? A fig cake and raisins. He eats, and the text says his strength returned. Dried, pressed figs are extraordinarily mineral-dense, meaningful potassium, calcium, and magnesium in a compact, shelf-stable form, plus natural sugars balanced by fiber, so energy releases more gradually than refined sugar would. Grow it yourself. Fig trees are famously low-maintenance, drought-tolerant, and can produce for decades once established. One of the best plant-once, harvest-for-life additions to a garden. The original recovery bar didn't come in a wrapper. It came off a tree. Item 6. Roasted lamb and herbs. Skip crop growing note. Focus on herb pairing. Hyssop, marjoram, mint. The Passover lamb wasn't roasted plain. It was prepared with hyssop, marjoram, and mint pressed into the meat. This wasn't decoration. Hyssop and marjoram both carry documented antimicrobial and antioxidant properties, and mint has long been used to support digestion and bile flow, working alongside a meal that also delivered zinc, B12, and highly absorbable iron. Grow it yourself. All three herbs, hyssop, marjoram, mint, are some of the easiest perennial herbs for a garden bed, and mint in particular will take over a container happily. The herbs weren't garnish. They were part of the recipe's function.
Item 7. Ezekiel's multi-grain blend, the recipe that surprised nutritionists. This is the one I promised you. Ezekiel 4:9 gives an oddly specific recipe: wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt, combined into one loaf. When food scientists actually tested this exact 6-ingredient combination, they found something unusual. The amino acid profiles complement each other so precisely that the finished bread delivers a complete protein profile. Every essential amino acid present in meaningful amounts, similar in completeness to what you'd get from an animal protein source. Grains alone are typically low in lysine. Legumes fill that exact gap, while grains fill in what legumes lack. Grow it yourself. This is a full grain bed project. Wheat, barley, millet, and spelt in one plot, with beans and lentils planted alongside as natural soil improvers. 5 other grain-legume combinations wouldn't produce the same result. These 6 in these proportions do, and that precision is what still surprises researchers today.
Item 8. Cumin and coriander, the everyday spice medicine. Isaiah describes a farmer planting cumin and caraway with real care. These weren't minor seasonings. They were valuable, intentional crops. Modern research on cumin has looked at a compound called thymoquinone and found measurable effects on fasting blood sugar and insulin sensitivity in some clinical studies. Effects meaningful enough that researchers have taken note, though cumin is a supportive dietary tool, not a substitute for prescribed diabetes medication. Coriander seed has separately shown effects on blood sugar and cholesterol markers in smaller trials. Grow it yourself. Both are easy annual herbs, and homegrown seed has dramatically more aromatic oil than anything that sat in a spice jar for 2 years. Same grain, same field, but the spices were doing real metabolic work. Item 9. Broiled fish and wild thyme, the resurrection meal. Luke 24. The risen Jesus asks for food, and the disciples hand him broiled fish. Not symbolic. Fish was daily food throughout Galilee. The fish of that region were rich in long-chain omega-3s, EPA and DHA, the fats your brain is built from and can't efficiently make on its own. EPA in particular is one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatory compounds in nutrition science. The wild thyme, often cooked alongside it, contains thymol, an antimicrobial compound still used today in professional oral care products. Grow it yourself. Thyme is one of the most drought-tolerant, container-friendly herbs you can grow, pairing naturally with any fish dish. We swapped omega-3 rich fish for feedlot protein that barely contains any, and the population health data shows it. Item 10. Vinegar and roasted grain, the weed you're already growing. Ruth 2:14. Boaz hands Ruth bread to dip in vinegar alongside roasted grain in a field full of wild herbs clinging to the cut stalks. Here's the detail that matters most. Acetic acid, the active compound in vinegar, has been shown in controlled studies to blunt the blood sugar spike that follows a carbohydrate-heavy meal. In one frequently cited trial, roughly 2 tablespoons before a meal noticeably reduced the post-meal glucose response. Ruth was doing this every day in a wheat field with no idea why it worked. Grow it yourself. This weed I mentioned in the hook, dandelion, often grows wild right alongside grain crops, exactly as it likely did in that ancient field. If you've been yanking it out of your lawn, you may be composting one of the most bitter, liver-supportive plants on this whole list.
So here's what 10 minutes of scripture and 10 minutes of nutrition research have in common. Barley for endurance, lentils for the gut, alliums for the immune system, bitter greens for the liver, figs for recovery, herbs alongside lamb, Ezekiel's grain blend for complete protein, cumin and coriander for blood sugar, fish for the brain, and vinegar for metabolic balance. None of this is new, it's just forgotten, sitting in a book that's thousands of years old, waiting for a garden to grow it in again. If you want the full growing guide with every planting chart and recipe from this video, grab the Biblical Garden Handbook. Link is in the description below. Drop a comment. Which one of these are you planting first? I read every comment. And if you want more videos connecting ancient wisdom to modern science and your own backyard, subscribe to Evergreen Gardening and hit the bell. We post every week. Educational content only, not medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare professional before making significant dietary or health changes.